It's lovely to be here. I'm Jayne-Ann Young and I work for Visible Learning based in New Zealand, and we take the research of Professor John Hattie, and we are the corporation that puts the wrap around professional learning and development for teachers in schools and school districts around the world. The teacher's role in this is absolutely critical. Teachers have to be really aware of being able, to provide the conditions so that students can peer assess, self-assess, that they have rubrics around the room to show what success looked like, that the students can, and worked exemplars so the students know exactly what the teacher's aiming for them to do. It's trying to decode learning, if you like, from the student's perspective. And the students, when they have ownership, they can actually make decisions themselves, whereas I can do that. I need to move on to something else. I've progressed further than what you're teaching the rest of the class. Am I able to go and do something else? And the teacher being able to say yes. So it's really important that teachers are aware that they're not just teaching an age or a particular level. They're teaching a group of students who will be crossing over a huge variation, and teaching to the middle is not sufficient. If we're going to pass the ownership over to our learners, the learners need to be able to take control and saying to the teachers, I know this, I need to move on. It takes a big open classroom for that to happen. Students may think that they know what they can achieve or what their expectations are, but the role of teachers is to mess with those students' thinkings, and it's to push them beyond what they think that they're capable of. We will often say we're going to do our best. Well, sometimes our best isn't actually enough because it's what we think we're capable of doing. So what if the teacher was able to provide conditions so that those students were able to push beyond what they thought that they were capable of doing? The motivation for that for our students, and once they have done something like that, becomes enormous and self-fulfilling, and then they expect more of themselves. But to have those students' expectations, we've got to have the teachers understanding that they expect so much more of their students than what they're currently getting. Sometimes it seems to us that we're settling in our classes that our teachers are working far too hard and our students aren't working hard enough. We've got to flip that around so that those students understand that learning comes with hard work, perseverance and concentration, and teachers provide opportunities for that to happen. Students' expectations, they'll meet whatever you set. If you set the expectation here, they'll get there. If you set it here or here, they'll meet that as well. So push beyond what they think that they're capable of. Around the world, people are saying we need smaller class sizes. Smaller class sizes do have a bit of an impact, but only if the teacher changes the way that they're teaching. So we can reduce class sizes all people want, but if they continue to teach in the same way that they've always taught, they're always going to get the same results. So the research tells us that class sizes, if you want to go and spend money, sure, go by all means, but unless you change the way you're doing your job, you're actually not going to see the changes that you thought you might. Teachers are we're trained to teach groups of around about 25 to 28, and we're really effective. But when we get groups of 15, what do we need to do differently, and how is that going to operate, and what are the dynamics of the classroom? And that's an area that we haven't really explored enough when we reduce class sizes. Another one of the sacred cows, if you like, is teacher subject matter knowledge. It's sitting quite low on the charts for influence for effect size. And that's quite confronting for teachers because of course we expect our teachers to know a lot. But what we found out through the research is that that's not the case in so many areas, because we can have teachers who can teach a lot of stuff, but it's at surface level. And if you have teachers only at that level, teacher subject matter knowledge doesn't really matter that much. I think I could go in and I could do a rough job of teaching some math and some science and what have you, but I would never be able to take those students to higher level thinking or deep level thinking because I'm not an expert in that area, and I don't know exactly when to start influencing, changing students' thinking into going into a new area. So teacher subject matter knowledge sits quite low, but it's because we're seeing too much surface level teaching. And if where that really counts, that subject matter knowledge, is when we want to get and influence deep level learning and change the opportunities for students later on and after they've got their initial learning underway. The biggest thing that I think teachers need to do with their learners is have fantastic relationships. That teacher-student relationship, 0.75, 0.72, thereabouts. If the foundations and the relationships aren't right, learning's not going to happen. Have you asked the students what it's like in your class? Have you actually used the teacher standards in this country and given that survey out to students to get an understanding of what it's like for them to be in your class? And then once you've got that information, what do you do with it? We've been doing this for a number of years now. We've taken teacher standards from around the world and we've given these surveys out to students, and we found out all sorts of things. As a teacher not that long ago, only 3.5 years ago, and certainly as a deputy principal and in other positions in schools, I undertook these, and I found out from my students so many things that I was unaware of, and I had to act on that. One of those that I found out was that they didn't like it when I seemed disorganised when I came to class, because I was always rushing from my office to get to class. I had to act on that because it was impacting on the way the students felt in my classroom. That was really fascinating for me, because I was the lead learner in that school, and yet my students were telling me that they weren't satisfied, and for them it was really off-putting that I wasn't timely to meet their goals. Now, some of my staff found lots of other things out as well, but we took the time and we listened sincerely to what our student voice was. Student voice is the most critical thing we have to pay attention to in our schools, and these kids know how to give us feedback about what we're doing and how we're doing, and we need to listen to them a whole lot more than what we do. Sitting on our effect size chart, leadership sits at a 0.39, but we call that it's got a moderating effect because we've got some leaders who are having far more impact on student outcomes than others. We've used the two terminologies. We've got transformational and instructional leadership. And what we know now from the research, and this is coming from Viviane Robinson and her team primarily, who've done quite a large meta-analysis of their own on leadership, and others around the world too, that people who are working in the instructional space, leaders who are getting down and dirty with the data, that they understand what's happening in their schools, that they're discussing data with their staff, they're setting targets, they're monitoring progress, they're getting into classrooms, they're visible, they're talking with the learners and they're asking, what are you learning? One of the things we never ask in visible learning is, what are you doing? We always say, what are you learning? How do you know you've learned that? And so leaders who can go in and they can see that in their teachers' classrooms, and the students can see them being the lead learner in the school, has value and has huge impact. Now, we're not saying that the work in the transformational space is not important. It is very important. Direction, vision, strategy still needs to be done. But how much time over the course of the week are you spending on that compared to the area where we know has the most impact? So one of our advice for leaders, take time out of your week every week and make it in your diary that you're going out at these times and you're visiting classes and you're talking to the learners and you're talking to the teachers and you are being with them and you're being present and engaging in that learning and not sitting in an office. I would like parents to allow their children to be children and to not micromanage them too much. Children of all ages, going right up into those teenage years, need time to play, whatever that means for that age. We talk about two breeds of parenting coming in. We've heard about the tiger moms and coming in and that push, and no doubt parents want the best for their children. But we've also talked about a parent breed, and we talk about the mowers. And these are the parents who will do everything that they can to get all the obstacles out of their way for their child to be at the front of the line, to get the best result for themselves. We're not sure, in fact we're pretty sure they're not doing it the right way. Kids need to fail, kids need to be able to have resilience, to pick themselves up from some adversity and dust themselves off and have another go. The more we wrap them round in cotton wool and the more we try and not have them fall over or fail, the more damage we're doing to them. And I think this is becoming a parenting problem around the world, where we do want the very best for our children, but that includes learning those skills about resilience. It's my biggest tip for parents is that, and the other one is stop overpraising them. We're praising them for breathing correctly in some cases. It's actually wrong. We need to praise them for the correct things. All children need praise for all sorts of self-efficacy and what have you. But when we're praising learning, when in actual fact it's not that great, we're doing them damage. And we need to stop doing that as well. The work of Carol Dweck and John Hattie and what they're doing in this field is quite remarkable, and I truly think that everybody should get into that and read some of their work. If I have one message that I'd like people to walk away with, it's the key message from John's work, and that is know thy impact. That's what he wanted to call the book in the first place. The Visible Learning book was Know Thy Impact, but for various reasons he couldn't. So he wants everybody to be innovative. That's the first thing, but also acknowledge that they are change agents. Every teacher in that room has the capacity to change lives, and that you are a change agent, and you have to accept that responsibility. And we can't make excuses for why kids are not succeeding in our classes. It's our responsibility to make changes for those students. It's the most wonderful vocation in the world, and we have the opportunity to not just change lives but change directions for whole areas, whole countries in some cases. And it's a massive responsibility, but it's the most exciting thing we can do, but we need to do it from a really sound basis. So get into the evidence, get the research, have a really clear understanding. Don't just read our work, read research that's going on from everywhere. Make sense of it and have that be the leverage that you need to make change in your school, your classroom, your district.